Let's go to in-studio guest number 2. What a weekend it has been for her. Leslie Smith is here. Hello, Leslie. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Thank
How are
you so
you?
much for coming in. Please
Thanks.
have a seat. Sorry for keeping you waiting.
No, actually, it worked out just fine.
out.
I went to this address in New Jersey.
Yes.
And then I got pulled over for switching lanes on the way here.
Come on.
But everything worked out perfectly because I'm here now.
Pulled over for switching lanes. What does that mean?
I was in the tunnel and I switched lanes.
With the hard line?
I did it twice.
Wow. And you got pulled over for that? There was a cop right behind you?
Apparently.
Damn. Because you were worried about being late.
Yes.
Oh, no. I feel so bad.
It worked out fine, though. He's been training since he was 6.
The cop?
Yes.
Did he let you off?
Yeah.
He did?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Did he recognize you?
No.
He didn't?
No, but I told him that I was on my way for your show. Maybe he recognized you in your show.
Okay. Now I feel better. All right. Well, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What has this weekend been like for you?
Oh, man, it's been a roller coaster. I mean, a weight cut is always intense, and I came into this not knowing, but pretty sure that no matter what happened with my fight, that come Sunday, I was not going to be on the roster because they hadn't asked me about renegotiating my contract or anything. And so I was mentally preparing for that and getting ready for this fight and to do the very best. You know, everybody wants to have a glorious fight all the time, but then especially knowing it's one of the last times that maybe you're going to get to be on that stage. And then the weight cut, and then finding out everything that happened afterward.
Yeah.
So I found out, as soon as I weighed in, I found out that she had already weighed in and decided not to continue making weight.
Okay.
And then they said, okay, you've got these options if you want to take the fight, and you have to decide by 11, which is whatever. Probably not the same restrictions that other people have, because most people, their opponent who doesn't make weight until 11. So it doesn't seem like it would be a split-second decision for most people. But and then they said I could take the 20% of her purse, which is only $2,400. Everyone's like, why didn't she take the?
Right. Can I pause you there for a second?
Yes.
'Cause I feel I don't want to get too far ahead.
Yeah.
I actually want to go way back.
Okay.
You had one fight left on your deal, right? Going into this fight. Mm-hmm. At what point did you realize that you were not getting? Did they ever offer you a contract extension? There was never any talks.
No.
Did you reach out to them before this fight, or maybe when you accepted this fight and said, "Last fight on my deal, hey guys, just a reminder, can we talk about a new deal?" Were there any talks about an extension? If I win, if I lose, what am I looking at? Any talks like that?
No, because I wouldn't have tried to re-sign or renegotiate a contract anyway, because my value is going to be higher.
Okay, so you wanted to roll the dice.
I'm a dice roller, yeah.
So you weren't upset about the fact that you were not getting an offer going into your last fight. You said,
Yeah, I was upset.
Oh, you were.
Everyone wants an invitation to the party, even if you don't go. Like I wanted them to ask me.
You wanted them to say, "Hey, let's talk about an extension even before the Lad fight." But you were gonna say, unless I guess if they're offering you like a crazy $10 million deal, you're saying no. It's likely to say that you're saying no, right?
Yeah, unless it was like $100,000 flat. That was.
And you didn't think to say, "Hey, like going into this fight, can we talk about an extension?" You just wanted to go out and have a great performance and then spark those conversations.
Yes.
But you also said that you had a feeling or an inkling that this would be your last time fighting on this stage. So when did you get that inkling that this offer wasn't coming? And even if you win spectacularly, it's not coming afterwards?
Well, all the Project Spearhead stuff has, all the unionization and Project Spearhead stuff has, had me a little worried that maybe I'm getting on the wrong side of things.
Yeah.
And I think probably the moment when I realized that it was going to be tough for me to renegotiate was when we were at the fighter retreat last year. And
May.
Yes.
Okay.
And I asked Kobe Bryant the question about the union that he answered and gave support for it. And I heard that someone was standing next to Ari. I heard that he was a little salty about that.
Ari Emanuel.
Yes,
Salty
Ari
about
Emanuel.
the question?
Yes.
Okay.
And even though I've seen Dana White since then, and I've seen Sean Shelby since then, and they've been positive and smiled, and I guess in a way I was almost maybe hoping that Project Spirit would be significant enough for them to be a little bit worried about it. And then the fact that they did this unprecedented thing where they bought out my contract so that I wouldn't be around anymore kind of shows that they do think Project Spearhead is pretty significant.
So you come to terms with the fact that they are not going to offer you a contract, and even if you do something spectacular on April 21st, this is essentially going to be your last fight. You were thinking this is your last fight, win, lose, or draw, right?
Well, I had to mentally prepare myself for that because otherwise it's really depressing to not have anything on the horizon.
Yeah.
The times that I've been injured and not been able to know when I've got a fight coming up or when I haven't been in between promotions in a very long time, but not having something set, a goal to work toward, for me as an athlete who's so goal-driven and goal-oriented, it's really depressing.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to let myself get into anything like that. And so I've been working on preparing myself for the worst case scenario. Ideally, I would have had an amazing fight and gotten knocked out of the night. And then they would have been like, yeah, we do want you. But at the same time, I was preparing myself for the argument that if they weren't going to bring me on, to be like, look, I've got at bantamweight four fight winning streak that I've won 3 out of my last 5. 4 out of my last 5 it would be. Because right now I won my last fight, I got a stoppage. The one before that, I got fight of the night. The one before that was against Cyborg at a catchweight. And the one before that was a win against someone who's only ever been beaten except for by Misha Tate. So I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm in the top 10.
Yeah.
I put on exciting fights and I've been winning them. So having one more win, you know, I was hoping that they would want to sign me again and that I would get to keep fighting in the octagon. But I had to mentally prepare myself for not having that in order to protect my mental self.
And for those that may not know the timeline, this was your first fight since publicly announcing Project Spearhead.
Yes.
So there's kind of that hanging in the air as well. Were you concerned about the timing of announcing Project Spearhead? Like, did you think maybe I'll announce this, I'll fight my last fight, I know it's coming up, I'll announce this, after that fight I'll get a new contract, and now here I have a new 4-fight deal, they can't get rid of me for 4 fights. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to announcing it before the last fight, did you think at all about announcing it after you potentially won this fight? Just wait a few months. Did that ever cross your mind?
No, it didn't, because there's no guarantee for anything for getting re-signed with the UFC. That's one of the beauty about how they structure it with being independent contractors for them, is that there's no way to know. And so that was actually one of the reasons that I went ahead and launched Project Spearhead when I did, was because I realized that I've got my last fight coming up. And I know that the reason that people pay attention to me, that I'm here talking to you right now, and that anyone's paying attention or listening is because of the UFC and the platform that I've had from fighting on it. And so I wanted to make the most of that platform for as long as I had it, not assuming that I wasn't going to have it, but not counting on it either after the next fight. So yeah, no, it never occurred to me to wait until I was.
So this all went down Friday. I'm assuming you got to Atlantic City Tuesday? Mm-hmm. What was Tuesday through Friday? Because now you're Project Spearhead Leslie Smith, right? You're not just Leslie Smith who asked Kobe Bryant a question. There's a lot more there. Mm-hmm. What was the week like for you in Atlantic City?
Well, I was kind of antagonistic from the very beginning. The UFC holds us to contracts.
Yeah.
Everything that we do, they're like, nope, it's in your contract, unless they feel like doing something nice for somebody, and then they, you know, good job, that's wonderful, but they're not obligated to do these things, and they hold us to our contracts. So I got pretty salty as soon as I got off the plane, because we had to pay for our own luggage.
What do you mean, to check in your luggage?
To fly with our luggage, yes, to check in.
Okay.
It's 20. My corner and I, we had flights on American Airlines.
Yeah.
And this $4 billion company that I'm going to fight for, that we need our equipment to go do well for, they know we're going to have bags. We had to pay $25 each. I'm paying for it because he's my corner. I brought him out.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make sense. Like, that's such a low-level, basic way of taking care of the people who are performing for you. So I was frustrated about that. And then I started looking closer at the per diem, and the per diem amount changes wherever the location is. And for this place, it was $60 a day is what they decided was for the per diem. And we got there on Tuesday, and we go home on Sunday. That's their return date. They even tell us that's the return date. And that's 6 days, but they only pay for 5 days. And so I sent them an email saying, hey, what's up with the luggage? And by the way, I need another $120, $60 each person for the per diem for the last day.
You get 1 plus 1? You
Yeah.
plus 1, okay.
Exactly. And that's how it is for everybody. That's how it's been for everybody. And so they wrote back. They never said anything about the luggage in the initial exchange.
Who's they?
I was talking to Dean, and then he sent me through to the accounting.
Okay.
And I think that would be Amber was who I was emailing with. And everyone's been super incredibly nice. It's not any of the people, it's the policies. That frustrate me.
Right.
So I was like, hey, what's up with this? And they're like, yeah, no, we don't pay for the last travel day home. But they should. I mean, it's another day of traveling. That's 6 hours at an airport. That means I have to get breakfast wherever, not at home.
Yeah.
I have to eat while I'm on the plane, and then, which isn't included in my flight that they got either. And then I need to eat once I get there, because I eat a lot, and then an Uber or whatever to get home. So there's a lot of expenses incurred on the last traveling day home. So to just be like, no, we're not going to do that. So I pointed out that according to the California Labor Code, that they were responsible for that. And then a couple days later, they gave me a discretionary bonus of $500.
Wait a second. So so you mentioned the California Labor Code. Why are they beholden to the California Labor Code?
Because I'm a California resident.
Ah, okay. Fair enough. So you mentioned this on Tuesday?
Yes.
You say, why am I paying for my luggage? Why do I not have $120 extra in per diem? Their response is, we don't pay for the last day. You come back with California Labor Code, and then they pay you $500?
Yes.
And is that supposed to be including, we're covering your luggage, we're covering your per diem?
The email actually came from Hunter.
Hunter Campbell.
Yes. And
General Counsel of the UFC.
yes. And he said that so that I don't need to spend my time worrying about small things like per diems and luggage, that they'll just give me this bonus, and then I don't have to worry
Were you
about
happy
it.
with that?
I was, I needed the money. I mean, I was glad to get the money, and I was glad that they were responding to.
What day was this when this was resolved?
I think it was Thursday.
Okay, so it lingered for a couple days.
Yes.
Were you stressed out about this?
No.
No. You had a feeling it would be resolved?
No.
Okay. And is this the first time you brought these things up? Because you fought in the UFC multiple times before. Is it you?
Yes, this is the first time that I brought
Did you
these
not
things
notice
up.
this in the past, that you weren't getting paid for the last day of the per diem?
Internationally, I believe that most international flights include the luggage. So the luggage thing, that's really what set me off in the first place.
You fought in Mexico. You fought in Curitiba.
Yeah. Mexico, Curitiba.
Quebec. No.
Yeah.
You fought in Quebec.
Quebec City. And
Did you ever
Brisbane, I fought in Australia. And
This is your first fight in America?
this is my second fight in America.
What was the other one?
The other one was in Sacramento.
Oh, right. Okay. So you knew that then. Or did you not even fly for that
No, I
one?
just drove over to that one.
But you
yeah.
still didn't get the per diem on the last day.
Oh, that's a good point. No,
Okay.
I guess not. But the luggage thing is what set me off, so I didn't even look very closely. So once
okay.
the luggage happened, then I started looking closer.
Okay.
And the way that a lot of the UFC contracts are is they're very vague. And so they have their policies that they stick to on it. Like for the per diem, they were adamant. They were like, nope, we only pay for these days. We don't pay on your last traveling day home. And I was like, well, it doesn't say that in the contract, that you're only going to pay for the traveling days, excluding the last day traveling home. And the standard interpretation of per diem is the daily fees incurred during traveling for a company. So I felt like I had a leg to stand on, and apparently they did too, because they gave me $500. And when I say I was being antagonistic,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that they're used to being held to their contracts. I think that they are used to holding other people to their contracts, and that it doesn't happen very often that a fighter is like, hold on, look at this right here. You guys need to do this. because most fighters are pretty reluctant to get on their bad side because they could do something like this.
Pardon the pun, but were you going to Atlantic City looking for a fight? Were you trying, like you said, antagonistically? Were you going there like, I'm going to read every single piece of this contract, fine print. Anytime I feel like they're not, holding up to their end of the bargain here, I'm going to raise a stink. I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory, essentially. 'Cause you said you had a feeling this would be it for you.
Right. Well, I won't say as much that I was looking to raise a stink about everything and that I was looking for a fight, as much as it was that I was looking to be very defensive and very ready about everything.
Okay.
Because even though, like I said, all the individual people have been incredibly nice. Every single person. I mean, I hugged so many people and was like, I'm so happy to see you. And so many people were like, good job, what you're doing. UFC employees
okay.
are like, we can't say it very loud, but we think what you're doing is a good thing. It's important. You guys don't get treated very well. And so it's nice to see someone standing up for the fighters. But so in jiu-jitsu, when training with people, usually a lot of the injuries come from trying to work with someone and trying to take it light and relaxing and not being defensive and intelligent. And so I just, that's my mentality going in, was that I wanted to be aware of everything. I don't think anyone's going to put Visine in my water or do anything intentionally destructive to me. But I'm still, I didn't feel like I was walking into my home territory in the way that I usually would before.
So other than the luggage issue and the per diem issue, any other issues before Friday?
No.
That was it. Those were the two red flags, and you felt like you rectified them. Even though this wasn't like them giving, I'm assuming they didn't give everyone that extra per diem money, but they were kind of giving it to you. Did you even consider like making this a big deal to let the other people on the card know, hey, by the way, I'm getting an extra 120?
Yes, I'm still figuring out the best way to go about doing that. I think I'm going to send emails to everybody or tweet it to everybody. But I was getting ready for a fight, and so I didn't have time to do one of my mass tweets.
That's right.
And stuff like that. But yeah, that's definitely something. And then reading the contracts and going over everything, because I was reading everything. As soon as I checked in, they gave us a new bout agreement that was for the state of New Jersey Athletic Commission. And it said that we were going by the old rules, that they hadn't adopted the new rules. And then it listed some other stuff. It showed my show money and my win money. Further down, it said that if the athlete does everything that they're supposed to do, fulfills all the requirements, is licensed, makes weight, and the bout doesn't happen, then the promotion is responsible for the total amount shown above.
Say it again. Show and win.
They're responsible for the total amount shown above, was the words that they used.
Oh, shown above. And what is that amount?
Well, above was shown, it had my show money and then it had my win money. So my interpretation of that was total amount is show and win money. So because I had read that and taken a picture of it when I signed it, when I found out that Aspen didn't make weight, I felt like I had an opportunity to negotiate to extend my time in the UFC.
Why?
And so, because I figured they'd have to pay me my show and my win according to that contract, if that's what I wanted for not fighting. And they just said that they're not rich enough to be paying people who don't fight their win money. So I thought that I could negotiate, that I had some kind of leverage. And so I said, well, you guys would have to pay me this, but we can extend my contract. We can add 2 more fights on. And instead they said, no, we're just going to pay you your show and your win. It's going to count as your last fight on the contract, and we have no interest in renegotiating another fight with you.
By the way, were you given your, I forget how they term it now, people call it incorrectly the Reebok pay, but it's not the Reebok pay, it's sort of the fight week obligate. Were you given that as well?
No, I did show up to get on the weigh-in bus, but so that I could go through the weigh-ins and...
The ceremonial weigh-ins?
Yes, the ceremonial weigh-ins.
You already weighed in, no?
I did already weigh in. and the fight was already called off, but I wanted to go to the ceremonial weigh-in so that I could wear the Reebok stuff on the stage to fulfill the obligations in order to get paid. So I didn't get to do that.
They said you can't go?
They said I could go, but I wouldn't be walking across the stage or anything because the fight was already off.
Sure.
And so I sent an email. We'll see if they're going to honor the Reebok obligations.
What is it? What are you owed? Now,
5,000.
5,000. And show and win for you was 62,000, correct? At what point did you, so you weigh in, you make weight, you find out that she misses weight, right? She stepped on a scale, but she missed it by 1.8.
Yeah, but she did that at night. Sorry. Yeah,
Actually, yes, you're right. That's a very good point. She was first, you were second. When you weighed in, did you think that she was going to come back? Were you told that she was coming back to weigh in?
No, they told us already that she was done making weight.
Okay.
And so I've been trying.
You think that she called it off early because she had no intention of dropping that extra 1.8, right?
Yes.
Why else are you coming at 9 a.m.? Why not use the 2 hours?
Yes.
And then you're offered 20% to continue the fight, correct?
Yes, and that's all that I was offered. She has, both her manager and her coach messaged my team on cell phones to be like, hey, sorry about the wait or whatever. They both sent messages. Nowhere did anyone mention $5,000. This is the only time I'm going to say anything about it because...
Okay. That's what they told me as well. That's why they said that they have offered you $5K in addition to the $20K out of their own purse, so to speak, to take the fight. But you are saying that offer was never brought to your attention.
No. And then when I asked her coach, Jim West, where that offer, show me some proof that he sent me that offer, a text message or a phone call showing it, he said, we did it on multiple outlets, on Ariel Helwani's show and on Twitter. But that doesn't...
No.
That's not...
No, that's not an official offer.
Yes.
I didn't have a show, by the way, on Friday.
Or an interview with you.
Okay, fair
Excuse
enough.
me.
They sent me a statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you were never actually told by anyone involved in these negotiations that she's offering you an extra 5K. Had you been told that, would you have accepted the fight? 5K? No, it didn't make a difference. Moot point.
Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't...
And the 20% of her purse is what again?
It would have been $2,400.
Now, for those people who say, just take the 20% and move on with your life, take the fight, do something spectacular, what's your explanation for not taking the fight, for just...
Well, the UFC immediately said, when I tried to negotiate, that they would pay me the show and the win money for me not to fight.
They said that before?
Immediately. That was what they went...
First offer? Before even the 20%? Or did it
Yeah.
Really?
I weighed in, and then the commissioner came over. He said, hey, your opponent didn't make weight. You can take 20%. And I was like, how long do I have to make this decision? He said, come back at 11. You have until 11.
And what time was it around when you weighed?
It was probably like 9:30.
Okay.
And so I went and thought about it. As I was walking out, Heidi with...
UFC?
No, not with the UFC. She's a reporter, not Heidi Dean, who's wonderful.
Oh, Heidi Androl.
I believe
works for
so.
FS1.
I believe so,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
She was like, what's going on? And I told her that I told her about the contract. And I was all excited because it was just like right off the top of my head. I was like, oh, I think I have a bargaining point. I think I have some leverage, that I think they're going to owe me this amount because of this contract. And I'm going to try to use it as leverage to get 2 more fights extended on my contract.
And why 2, by the way? Any particular reason why you... Because usually it's like 4 or 6 or 8. Why did you pick 2? Is there any reason for that?
Well, I've been mentally preparing myself for them to not want to have me around.
So you were going for the lowest amount possible?
The second to lowest amount, because then we could be like, okay, how about 1?
Yeah, which is very rare. But I get it. Okay, just curious if there was another reason for that. So you're talking to Heidi?
I told that to Heidi, and then I told her about the contract and why I thought that I had leverage. And she shared that information, which is fine. That's her job. She's a reporter, and that's what I gave it to her for.
Yeah.
Well, I gave it to her because I was excited.
Okay. What were you excited about? That you thought you now had
a chance to stay in the UFC,
Okay.
that maybe on Sunday I would still be an athlete on the roster.
Gotcha.
And so I was always thinking 100 flat, but she
What do you mean 100 flat? For your new contract?
Yes. For 2 more fights, 100 flat.
100 flat. So no show win.
Correct.
Because now it's 31-31?
Correct.
Okay.
And so whatever she shared, because then the lawyer who I had helped me, he, as soon as he got on the phone, he said that they already heard that I want 100 and 100, and that's never going to happen. And that they were just going to pay me the show and the win money and then be done with it. And I was like, well, I only meant 100 flat. And what about just adding on just 1 fight? So immediately I was like, okay, well, let's back up off of that a little bit. And I threw that out, and I threw out also the idea of fighting anyway, even though I was already going to get the money for it. But that was a really tough decision. And ultimately, even if they had said yes to that, I would have been like, I can't do that. Because if they're already paying me the money, then I'm already making $62,000 for not fighting. So then if I had fought, it would have been just fighting out of pride to show everyone that, look, I'm not scared of Aspen, and here I am, and I don't want to disappoint all my friends and family, and I want to get my one last hurrah in this cage, given the situation. And so that was the biggest struggle for me, was even deciding whether or not to say that I wanted that last fight. But it turns out that wasn't even an option, because they didn't respond to me. They didn't respond to the lawyer who was doing the communication for me. After they said, we'll give you the show and the win, and then that's going to count as your last fight, there wasn't any more back and forth. We put more stuff out there, but they didn't respond back. And so I heard later that one of my teammates heard someone else asking Sean Shelby while we were in the back trying to work it out, and he was like, I don't think this fight's going to happen. And then I heard that Hunter was said that it's already not going to happen. So I don't think that there is. I think the second that I tried to use any kind of leverage, they were like, "You're going to use leverage on us," and my chances went down.
Did they ever give you a reason, or your lawyer a reason, as to why they are not interested in re-signing you? Did they ever explicitly say? No. All they said was, we're paying you out and we're done.
They said, we're paying out, and yes, and they said, and done. I don't know exactly what their words were, but then the lawyer who was speaking for me asked if they were saying that they have no interest in re-signing me ever. And they said, no, that's not what they're saying, just that they have no interest in renegotiating at this time.
Did you ever ask, is it because I am a part of Project Spearhead?
No, I should have. Maybe I will.
Did you, I mean, I was just curious if you asked why, because if someone doesn't know any of this story and they say 2-fight winning streak, the bonuses you just mentioned, why wouldn't they want someone like you around, right? Mm-hmm. So I was wondering if you ever got an explicit answer as to why they wouldn't want someone of your caliber around.
Well, it's my opinion that it's very clear that it's because of Project Spearhead, because what they did was unprecedented. They've never paid somebody their show and their win money.
I think they have in the past. Fighting. I think Ian McCall got it once, not that long ago. But I mean, you can't ignore and I'd have to look back. Mm-hmm. What's unprecedented about it, and I agree with your term, but what's unprecedented is to be done, because McCall came back, right? It's essentially like, let's just finish this up so that we can cut ties. That's the unprecedented part. I don't recall someone fulfilling their contract in a situation like this. Do you get what I'm saying? You get the distinction from what I'm saying?
I do.
So that's why I'm wondering, look, it's being a little naive. We assume that's the reason, but I was just wondering if they explicitly said, we feel as though XYZ, your involvement in this, you were antagonistic. I don't know what excuse they would bring up, but I was just curious. I guess not. They have not told you why they don't want you around.
Right. And maybe I shouldn't be using the word antagonistic, because it's not like I'm going out there intending to make them mad or intending to make them frustrated and not want to have me around. I'm just coming out intending to protect myself as well as possible because I realize that they're not protecting me. They're not doing everything that they can for me. They're not doing everything they can for any of the UFC athletes. I mean, it's $25 to pay for a bag. To not have to do that for the $4 billion company to just handle something small like that for the athletes, that's not a big deal. The per diem, to make it a policy to not pay for the last travel day home, that's not just me, that's all of the athletes. And so that's what I need to figure out is how am I going to structure this so that other athletes can get what's owed to them without being punished in any way similar to what's happened to me. And so I need to put some thought into that, into the best way, because ultimately, right now, the way it is, people would have to fight for themselves. And if we can organize and get something structured, that's what a union does, is that the company can't get mad at you. They have to go through the union. The union protects you. And so whether it's a union or an association, we need to have something that's going to be there to protect the athletes, to make sure they're getting their per diems, to make sure that they're getting their luggage taken care of, to make sure that these little things that, I mean, that's part of the reason that we have managers, is so that we don't have to be like, no, I don't want that fight. Instead, the manager comes on and they're like, well, what are the different options? What do we have here? And then...
Do you have a manager?
Not anymore.
Okay.
I did, but
You prefer to do it yourself?
At this point, yes. Now I'm going to.
Are you surprised if it's possible? Can you remove yourself? So I'm not asking Leslie Smith this question. I'm asking a knowledgeable MMA person who knows your story, who knows the UFC. Are you surprised that the UFC cut ties with you, given everything that's happened over the past few months?
I am surprised.
Why?
Because I think that it opens up an examination of how they feel about my activities in organizing the fighters recently. I think that by doing unusual behavior, that it's going to ask what are the unusual circumstances that led to this. And so the next step for even if it's not me, because I'm supposed to be speaking just as a knowledgeable MMA person, I think the next step for anybody who's in the situation of getting cut the way that I was cut is to follow up with litigation. We're going to file a charge with the National Labor Relations Board. I'm going to look to pursue the California labor law in some way. I feel like if I didn't do that at this point, that it wouldn't be living up to everything that I've been talking about. And that's why I couldn't even take that fight once they'd offered me the $62,000, because then I would have been fighting for free. And that's been my whole point this whole time, is that we shouldn't be manipulated by pride, that we need to look at ourselves as a business and fight for the large sums of money that we deserve. And if I had fought for free once they offered me that money, then I would have just poured water all over everything that I've been working on building.
Have you filed a complaint yet?
Not yet.
And when you say we, who's we? Obviously includes you, but who's helping you with this?
I don't want to, I mean, it's my plan. I'm through Project Spearhead. I'm going to talk to Lucas about it. I can't talk about anything that I've already talked with Lucas about.
Okay.
Because confidentiality issues. If I talk about it here, then it can open it up for other people to talk about it. So none of this is conversations with Lucas. These are plans that I have.
And Lucas Middlebrook, somewhat famous in the world of MMA for his work with Nick Diaz. Mm-hmm. Does he have a title within Project Spearhead?
No.
He's more of a consultant?
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? But is he your lawyer? Is he your counsel?
He hasn't been, I mean, not in any capacity yet. He's been a friend and he's educated me on all this stuff, and he's been really useful for everything. But no, we don't have any professional lawyer things going on yet.
Okay.
But we will.
One thing that was a little concerning about all of this was, and I can't say that I looked at all 500 accounts. Here you are sticking your neck out. I mentioned the last time you were on the show, you have, pardon my language, but bigger balls than anyone on the roster because look, your employment is on the line. And I saw Cajun Johnson, who of course is interim vice president. Is that accurate? Interim vice president. That was the only tweet that I saw publicly from a UFC fighter, active UFC fighter in support of you. Did anyone else come out in support of you?
A couple other people have.
Publicly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, either in comments on tweets or in Instagram. I'm not going to say their names.
Okay.
It meant a whole lot to me to see them, and I really...
But there are some.
Yeah.
I did not see any of them. So
Yeah,
I was looking, I wanted to see, because here is someone who's trying to galvanize the fighters, and I don't see galvanizing for your cause right now, your specific cause. I didn't see anyone do that, but I'm happy that you're saying that there were and that you saw them.
Yeah, there were a couple, and I don't need the fighters to publicly show their support for me. I mean, it'd be nice.
But isn't that what this is all about? Solidarity, unity?
Yes, but the situation right now is that it's my opinion that what the UFC did was illegal because they have created a situation where it encourages a climate of fear where the other people in the UFC on the roster are going to be fearful of publicly organizing and standing up for their rights and being like, hey, look, this is what it says on my contract. I need you to stick to my contract. So by creating a climate of fear that violates federal law, that's the whole point of the National Labor Relations Board and the laws that are in there is because it's an American, I mean, we had the Industrial Revolution, and then shortly after that, like, we needed labor unions, and they got us weekends, and they got child labor. They got all kinds of stuff for us, and they're still making changes for us. And so it's unfortunate the way that it is, that it went down, that it would have been nice if I had been able to avoid taking a fall like this. It would have been great, but the important thing now is to figure out how to make it so that other fighters don't have to take the fall. And they don't have to do anything publicly in order to protect themselves right now. All they have to do is sign authorization cards. That's it. Nobody will ever know. The National Labor Relations Board will never release their names, and we'll get a showing of interest, and then we can get determined to be employees or independent contractors. I strongly believe that we are employees. I think that we are different from all the other promotions because, like Bellator, for example, I think that Bellator really is so different in the way that it's structured. First off, they let fighters do cross-promotional things. My teammate, Carrie Melendez, she gets to fight. She got to do a kickboxing, and she's gotten to do MMA through Bellator. Bellator works with Glory. They've worked with... I wrote down some notes because I was like, these are good things. They're in talks right now about Ben Askren and Rory McDonald getting to fight with the ONE FC in Bellator. So they're more open to things like that. And that's a lot closer to an independent contractor relationship by not having uniforms, by allowing the fighters to have more individuality and get more money. I mean, sponsorships is like $50,000 to $100,000 a year for a lot of fighters. I can't claim that I ever made that before, but I was never in the top 10 before. I didn't have the wins that I have now before that happened.
Do you have the 30% yet?
30%
signatures?
No, we're not there yet, but we are on track to have it we have 1 year is the way it works from
the deadline.
Yes.
Oh, wow. And so what's the deadline?
February 12th is when the first card was signed. So we need to get those numbers before February 12th, and we are on track.
Are you more than 50% there? 50% of the 30%?
I'm not going to do numbers on here.
Why not? 30%.
Right? Yeah, because Because I don't want anyone to feel like their names are going to come up, or
All right.
I don't want
I'm not
anyone
asking
who's
for names,
signed. I
for the
know
record.
you're not asking
No, I
for
know.
names, but
You
it's
don't
like
want to make anyone uncomfortable that you
exactly.
might out them. Okay, so you mentioned that you believe what they did was illegal.
Yes.
If you are not classified yet as independent or employee by the NLRB, how could it be illegal?
Well, there whatever we're classified as doesn't change what we actually are. And
You believe that you're an employee,
I
but
strongly believe that
but
I'm an
they haven't.
employee.
You are not officially classified as an employee
Correct.
by either the UFC or the NLRB because they haven't been able to look at your situation yet because you don't have the 30%.
Correct.
So how could there? I'm just trying to lay this out for everyone.
Yeah.
How could it be illegal? Is this a product of bad timing in the sense that you are not classified yet? Had this been February 14th, you got the 30%, this happens. Wait a second, now they classify you as employee. But since you haven't been classified yet, and they haven't, as you said, explicitly stated that they are getting rid of you because of your involvement with Project Spearhead, do you feel like you may have fallen, do you fear that you may have fallen in this gray area where they'll say no harm, no foul, essentially?
No, I'm not worried about that, because no matter what happens as far as me going, I'm not trying to make $1 million off of this. It's not like
No,
I'm
I
like,
know.
this is my lawsuit, so I'm gonna come up. So darn it, I'm in the gray area. Like that was never my goal with
Gray
any
area
of
in the
this.
sense that they won't be forced to respond to this in any way. Like it won't hold up in court is what I mean.
Right. I hear that. So right now, there is a decision that's being made where misclassification will be a violation in and of itself.
Oh, okay.
It's not currently that, but it's a decision that's being discussed right now, is whether or not that's just purely just being misclassified. It isn't like, oh, guess we were wrong, we'll go ahead and fix that. Now it's like, no, if it's a violation in and of itself. So
Where's it being discussed?
the National Labor Relations Board.
They are reviewing this.
Yes.
Okay.
They are making the decision.
So there's a chance that even if you don't get the 30%, they may look at your situation.
Yes.
Okay.
If that happens.
Yes.
And I think that I still have a case, because if I bring this and then the first thing that they're going to have to do in order to evaluate it is determine whether or not we are independent contractors or employees. And so that does.
You think this may force their hand?
Yes.
Interesting. Wow. Did you hear from a lot of fighters privately?
A lot of people said good things to me.
Okay. So you feel like maybe the silver lining in all of this is that this may have shed a little more light on your situation and Project Spearhead? Do you feel like if you were not a part of Project Spearhead, you were just Leslie Smith, who's open about this stuff, maybe even Leslie Smith, MMAFA Leslie Smith, who brought it up to Kobe Bryant, but wasn't Project Spearhead Leslie Smith, do you think that you would still be in the UFC?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Once I went down this path and I started paying attention to more and more things, it got harder and harder to not talk about things that I'm seeing and paying attention. Like, I really wanted to make a big deal about Sasaki only getting $10,000 instead of the $21,000, but he didn't weigh in. I could have gotten him another $11,000 by asking the New Jersey Athletic Commission to do their job and make sure that he gets paid because he fulfilled all of his obligations. But the fight was called off before he actually stepped on the
He was told not to
scale.
weigh in, though,
Really?
from my understanding.
That's
The
interesting.
fight is off, is what they say. Now, there are situations where we've seen recently in Brooklyn, Anthony Pettis weighed in, and someone else, was it Brandon Moreno? I think Brandon Moreno, who was supposed to fight Ray Borg, also weighed in. But my understanding is that there's a new policy that if they are going to offer you a fight in relative short order, I don't know if it's exactly 30 or 60 days, they are now going to pay you $10K as opposed to just your show money. If they can't get you a fight and you make weight, weigh in, they tell you not to weigh in, your opponent falls out on weigh-in day, then they're going to pay you your full show. When this was told to me, I said, well, where is this written? Like, is this a policy that the fighter signed off on? Again, this to me all comes down to collective bargaining, right? Having a seat at the table. Hey, we're going to implement this, whether it's Reebok, USADA, this new 10K policy. who from the fighters are speaking up collectively on your behalf, and it just seems like no one is. So
Yeah.
they can change these policies willy-nilly. It seems like in the Lorenzo Fertitta era, they were okay with paying show money. That seemed to be the norm. But the new norm seems to be, if we're going to offer you a fight rather quickly, you're going to get 10K. And if we can't give you a fight, you're going to get your show. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
That's. I'm not saying I agree with this, by the way. I think that my theory is that no one, let's be honest, no one who was going to AC returned their ticket because Ulka Sasaki and Magomed Bibulatov weren't fighting on the card, right? I mean, I don't think anyone. So in other words, I don't think the UFC lost any money as a result of that fight falling off the card. They were prepared to pay show money for Sasaki, show money for Bibulatov, and one of those guys is getting win money and maybe even a discretionary bonus, right? In the end, they walk away from that fight with just having to pay 10K. So it actually worked out in their best interest that the fight fell off. Now, if it's Kevin Lee and Edson falling off, now we're talking about something else. But if it's a low-level fight pass or low-level FS1 card fight on the prelim card, it actually works out in their best interest. Does that make sense? That's my issue with the whole show win breakdown, because it actually ends up being favorable to the promotion if they're just going to pay you 10K or a show if this fight falls through, because no one's giving back. The money's already allocated. They were already prepared to pay show one win.
Totally. I completely agree with that. I'm glad to be learning about that right now, that's a new policy, and you're right. That is another reason. And
How does
that's
a fighter
something
who's fighting on the card not even know this?
That's a great question.
Did you know that in New Jersey, because we had someone on the show earlier talk about this, Kevin Lee, did you know that Aspen didn't get an extra? Because when they were in Glendale, Brooklyn, you get either an hour or an extra 2 hours after not making weight. Did you know that in New Jersey, it's a hard stop at 11?
I realized that after I read an article, but I didn't know it at the time. But she was already rehydrating by the time that I weighed
shouldn't
in.
you guys know this going into the fights?
Oh,
There
absolutely.
should be a list of.
Oh, they didn't, especially something like we were on the old rules. So like we could do the 3 points of
You
contact.
didn't know that?
And I knew that because I was like, hey, what's up? I'm signing this. It says we're going by these rules. What
But
does
you only
this
found
mean?
out upon.
Only
you didn't know
because
this 2 months ago.
No, I only knew this because I was reading the contract and I was like, hey, Dean, what's up with this contract? What are these rules that it's talking about? And he was like, hold on, let me call somebody. And then they called somebody else, and then they called back and said, okay, here are the rules. If I hadn't done that, and then he was like, well, we would have gone over them before the fight. But who listens to the rules right before the fight? I'm sorry. Maybe everybody else does, but I
Feels
don't.
like it should
I'm
be
getting
something
ready
that's
for
in your bout
fighting.
agreement that you signed 2 months ago, right?
Yeah.
This is where you're fighting. These are the cards that you're playing with in this state, right? Because every state is different.
Yeah.
1 hour here, old rules there, finger pointing there. I mean, it's crazy. How I feel for you guys in the midst of a fight. How are you supposed to think? Is it 3 point here, or is it
Yeah.
Who thinks of these things? Can I open my hands? It's madness.
No, and especially a person is going to fight like however they train. So unless they're like, oh, I can take advantage of this new rule, or I need to be careful so that I don't violate this new rule, that happens and gets ingrained in the training ahead of time. It's very infrequently that someone hears something minutes before they go out to fight, and then they're like, okay, all right, let me just implement that or change that
Sure.
or take advantage of that.
I will say though, and I know you don't have a manager, and kudos to you for doing this on your own. I do think a lot of the onus does go on the manager's shoulders. The managers, you can't expect the UFC to just be nice now and say, hey, we're going to pay you your show, or hey, we'll pay you your show and win, which they've done, as I said, a couple times in the past. I feel like everything needs to be in writing. If my opponent misses weight, but I weigh in, I get X. If my opponent misses weight on Thursday and I don't weigh in, I get X. It can't just be willy-nilly anymore.
Right,
Don't
everything.
you think this needs to be all in writing?
Totally, I completely agree.
So they're kind of just taking advantage of the fact that everyone's sort of asleep at the wheel on the other side of the fence, in my opinion.
Well, it's that climate of fear, not
think that's
just
what it is.
it's not just for organizing, but it's also just for talking about. Like asking for more, or saying, is this how it goes? Because they don't just explain things to you. They don't just offer you everything just because you're there. Like, a person has to ask for things. A person has to have some idea of what's going on in order to get anything. And coming into the UFC, I didn't know anything. I was just really excited to be there, which I imagine most other people are. And I wasn't going to ask any questions. I was just going to go out and I was going to do my best and I was going to win fights and I was going to show them that I'm going to be number one. And then people are just going to fall all over themselves because I'm so amazing. Like,
Sure.
That's the mentality.
Yeah, most people have that mentality.
Yes. And so that's one of the reasons that we need collective bargaining, because all the issues are the same issues for all the fighters. It's not like when some of the conversations that I've had, people have been like, well, they've been nice to me so far. I don't know if I want to sign a card yet because they've been nice to me so far. Or I don't know if I want to go public with it. If I'm in conversations, usually they've already signed a card. But they're like, well, I don't want to go public with it because the UFC has been nice to me so far. But even in that statement, that so far indicates that everyone realizes that eventually everybody gets cut, or their interests don't line up with the UFC's interests. And as soon as the fighter's interests don't line up with the UFC's interests, then that fighter gets thrown under the bus in some way, shape, or form. I mean, Amanda Nunes, when she couldn't fight because she had that sinus thing, and then Dana White was like, yeah, I don't know why she didn't fight. She was cleared. I don't remember exactly the words, but I got the impression that he wasn't backing her up. He was like, yeah, I don't know either. And then she had to shut down her social media because there was so much hate coming at her after that. And that's a champion of the company, making an intelligent decision based on their own health and what they know is a smart decision to do for their career. Eventually, all the fighters are going to have the same issue, and that's why collective bargaining is so important. And to get there, we have to sign the cards.
Are you worried that now that you're not in the UFC, you won't be as effective as the leader of Project Spearhead?
I am a little bit worried that my platform has gotten smaller.
Yeah.
But Project Spearhead doesn't necessarily need a leader. Like, I don't need to be the president of Project Spearhead.
But someone needs to galvanize the troops, right?
Well,
You need to be the Kurt Flood of this thing. You know who Kurt Flood is, right?
yeah. I mean, I don't want to die penniless like
No.
Kurt Flood or anything like that.
You know his story, how it ended. I mean, what he did was incredibly heroic, but it did cut short his career.
And it took years, actually, before it was like another 13 years before they actually got free agency in baseball after that.
Right. But there still needs to be someone to be the catalyst.
Yeah, and hopefully I have been the catalyst. Hopefully my challenging the contracts and saying, that's another thing, is that I hope that fighters realize now, too, that anytime their opponent doesn't make weight, that's an opening to renegotiate. They don't have to take the 20%. That's a place where we're all manipulated by pride, because people are like, yeah, okay, I'll just take it. That's not on the contract.
Okay. And will you continue with Project Spearhead?
Totally.
Okay.
I'm 100% going to continue with Project Spearhead.
Are you worried that no other promotion will sign you as a result of your stance? Like, are you worried that Bellator won't sign you, or PFL, or ONE, or I don't know, any other promotion under the sun?
Gosh, I hadn't really thought about that.
Are you worried? Look, I'm not comparing you to Colin Kaepernick, but people can be blackballed in sports, right? You know this.
Yeah, it's true.
Are you worried that you will be blackballed?
Well, I don't feel like the other promotions are as controlling as the UFC. And I feel like I was talking about Bellator earlier, like I feel like that's a great place for a fighter to get to show their individualism. They get to work on their sponsorships. They're not restricted to staying with just inside of their sport or their contract. I've always wanted to do boxing. Kickboxing would be cool. I've always wanted to fight in Japan. Risen would be a cool thing. Have
you reached out to anyone yet?
No, not
a little
yet.
Soon.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But you don't feel like this is the end of your career?
No.
Because even if you do continue elsewhere, Bellator, Risen, ONE, whatever, you still have a platform.
Yeah, and I'm still top 10 in the world.
Right.
Like, nothing's going to take that away. I don't know where else, unless someone wants to start a 35 division for me, I kind of see myself going down to 25.
Okay.
Which I've done twice in the past, and I feel like I would be better at it now than I ever have been.
And has this shined a light on your, like, are you getting inquiries from outside the MMA bubble because of this strange a very unique, somewhat unprecedented turn of events, and your connection to a story that is prevalent in other sports. I mean, we hear about CBA and strikes and unions and baseball and basketball. Every sport has this, right? We're still playing, as I like to say, in the 1920s era in football, where they were just wearing leather helmets, and so much has changed in the last 80 years. I think in 60 to 70 years, we'll look back on this era and say, I can't believe that things were being done this way. I'm wondering if this story got big enough to where you're hearing from people outside of the MMA bubble, media, that again, another silver lining.
Yeah, I just did an article for, I think it was Forbes Women's Forbes, something like that. And I've been talking to different people. Sports law people are very interested in the situation. Yeah. And I've been, a lot of people have reached out to me. I've been a little bit caught up, so I haven't responded to a whole bunch of people. In fact, I just got to hang out with my parents and
what a time to have your parents here, huh?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. What was really nice, though, is that I was able to give my dad a Project Spearhead hat.
Oh, wow, you got a hat.
I do. And I have a Project Spearhead shirt.
Look at that.
Yeah.
For us.
Yeah. One of them is for you.
Okay.
And then I brought another one. Something that we're doing is because I'm going to start litigation and I am going to have legal fees.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have asked me, how can they support? What can they do? So we're going to sell some of the shirts.
Okay.
Not a ton of them, only a couple, but there's also going to be a GoFundMe. We're starting a GoFundMe. I was so reluctant to start a GoFundMe because of the stigma of a GoFundMe fighter.
Yeah.
But it is going to take money in order to litigate and file all these claims and do things. And
is it released yet? Or is it public, the GoFundMe?
Yes, it already has been created. I haven't shared it yet.
Okay.
So I'm going to share it after this. This is the first time I'm sharing it. But what I told myself in order to feel better about it, so I don't feel like it's a GoFundMe fighter thing, is that it's more like the UFC is acting like the Walmart of MMA, in that the fighters need to be subsidized in order to take care of themselves. And so I don't feel like it's a reflection on me as a GoFundMe fighter, because that's not what it's about. It's about getting the help that we need in order to make things right for the fighters.
Do you believe come February 12th, 2019, you will have the 30%? Do you believe this will all be worth it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do. And it will make it all worth it. I was going to ask you if you could sign one of these, actually.
Sign it? What do you want my signature for?
Well, I know that you have a whole bunch of fans.
Yeah.
And so I thought that maybe we could auction off some of these shirts, and that would be a pretty cool thing. You could think about it.
Yeah. Let me do that. I don't even have a pen here. Do you have a pen?
No.
Okay.
That's way more foresight.
I'm happy to take it. I have a lot of respect for you, because even if someone doesn't necessarily agree with every step of the way, to stick your neck out and to, potentially lose out on opportunities is a very courageous thing. You don't need me to tell you that. So I wish you the best. And I'm sorry that it ended up this way. But look, there have been trailblazers in the past, like Curt Flood, as we mentioned, and others who have had to sacrifice, their own kind of current goals and things that you are looking to achieve for the greater good. And it sounds like you're ready to do that. So good luck to you.
Thank you. And hopefully I won't have to make that big of a sacrifice.
Sure.
Hopefully my career is going to go to another promotion, and then it's going to be a million times better.
You don't want to go back to the UFC?
I'd love to go back to the UFC.
If they called you tonight and said, you know what, let's figure this out, you're open?
I'm totally
under
open.
The right terms. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, keep us posted. Thank you for doing this. And I'm sorry that you made it, you went to the wrong address in Newark of all places, but I'm glad you finally made it here. And I'm happy you didn't get a ticket, because that would have been insult to injury, as they say. Thank you for doing this, Leslie. I really appreciate it. All the best to you. I
appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And please keep us posted on your progress.
I totally will.
All right. There she is, Leslie Smith.